So hello and welcome. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We're so excited to be celebrating the 31st birthday of the ADA with you all. Thank you so much for your support, and we're excited to have you. So I'm just going to start with some housekeeping notes. First, I'll introduce myself. I'm Sarah Clark. I'm the digital marketing strategist at Abler. And yeah, so let me give you guys some housekeeping. So I have spotlighted our ASL interpreter. You can also pin her video so that she can be on your screen at all times. We also have captions enabled. So if you need to turn those on, that should be at the bottom of your screen, and that will be available throughout the webinar. If you have any technical difficulties or any trouble seeing the interpreter or the captions, please just put it in the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat throughout the webinar, and I will do what I can to help you out. Additionally, throughout the webinar, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A function. We have an allotted time at the end of this webinar for a Q&A. So I'll be keeping track of all of your questions, and we'll make sure to get to as many as we can. And finally, I wanted to mention that this webinar is being recorded. So I will be sure to email all of you early next week with a link to the recording, and that recording will also be captioned. So it will be accessible for everybody. All right, so that's pretty much it for me. I'm gonna pass it over to our CEO and co-founder, John Samuel. So go ahead, John.
Thanks, Sarah, and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today to celebrate the 31st anniversary of the signing of the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is a momentous occasion that we're so excited to be celebrating with you all today. And today is also the celebration for the City of Raleigh's Mayor's Committee for Persons with Disabilities Employee Resource Day. So for the last few years, I've been part of the Mayor's Committee for Persons with Disabilities, and I'm now the chair. And so we've decided to combine these two events together because it gives an opportunity to really help raise awareness and spread the importance of ADA and employment. And so we're really excited that you're here to celebrate on this webinar because we decided to name this event Disability Works, driving inclusivity post-COVID. The whole, the last few years we've been dealing with the challenges of COVID, but it's actually been in some ways good for many people with disabilities because the remote working has been beneficial because we've taken away that transportation barrier. And now when we think about coming back into the office, how are we going to make sure that the work environment is still inclusive of all people? Yeah, as we think about everything going on, we want to make sure what our companies can be doing to make sure that it is inclusive and that people are going to feel comfortable and feel like they belong. And so that's what our discussion is going to be today. We have a great keynote and we have a great panel towards the end of this presentation or the webinar. So we're super excited about this. And so right now, kind of the agenda, we will have a keynote by Hannah Olsen, who is the co-founder, or is the founder and CEO of Chronically Capable, which is a super cool company that's really making a big impact on disability inclusion. And then we're going to have a little bit of break and talk about the James Benton scholarship that the City of Raleigh's Mayor's Committee with Persons with Disability is providing to 2 participants. And then we'll have a panel hosted by my friend Dan Gonzalez, who is the co-founder over at District C. So we'll start off, let's get started with this. Unfortunately, Hannah isn't able to make it here today, but she did send over a video, and we're super excited about this because she has an amazing story. And similar to myself, she has a lived experience and she did something about it. And so I hope y'all enjoy this, and because I really have enjoyed getting to know her over the last few years. And so without further ado, Sarah, can we roll it?
Hi everyone. For those of you with access needs, I want to first start by describing myself. I'd be described as a white woman with brown hair that rests above my shoulders. I'm wearing a black dress, and behind me is a plant and white walls. I'm so grateful to be here with you all today to celebrate ADA Day. My name's Hannah Olsen, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Chronically Capable. Chronically Capable is a talent marketplace and community connecting chronically ill and disabled professionals to inclusive employers. We are changing the way chronically ill and disabled people work by redefining career structures and providing our community with opportunities that are in balance with their health needs. I got into this work after my own experience, navigating the workplace while living with an invisible disability. At 20 years old, I was diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease. At 21, I had a PICC line placed in my arm, just weeks after graduating from college. At 22, I had to leave my dream job due to the aggressive treatment protocol that required me to be hooked up to my IV for up to 8 hours a day. I struggled with, is there a place for people like me? Is there a place for people with illness and disability in the workplace? And for a while, I thought that there wasn't. As I learned about the depth of chronic illness and disability in the United States, I was alarmed. In some ways, I was comforted to know that I wasn't alone. But ultimately, I was angry that there were millions of people out there like me struggling to find meaningful and inclusive work opportunities. So from that point on, I became determined to create employment opportunities for those living with chronic illnesses and disabilities. My hopes are that through Chronically Capable's ambitions, nobody will ever have to decide between their health and their career again. We've all had a crazy year. And now, as COVID restrictions are loosening and the country is settling into a new normal, the disability community has mixed feelings about the future of the workplace, and rightfully so. For many, returning to normal means exclusion and inaccessibility. What's more, for those of us who are immunocompromised, a rush back to normal can carry significant risk, especially with the new Delta variant. No one should have to decide between their health and their work ambitions. During the pandemic, many workplace accommodations became commonplace. Things like workplace modifications, new schedules, and notably remote work. In March of 2020, just days after launching Chronically Capable, it was as if at the snap of some fingers, the world just went remote. And workplaces across the country, even across the globe, had to accommodate their employees. They had to make adjustments, and they had to make them fast, and they did. In many ways, this pandemic has shown companies that it is possible to increase accessibility, and more importantly, it's shifted the stigma that's often tied to working from home. From the employee perspective, in this past year, we saw an increase in employee productivity, employee happiness. And for the first time ever, employees and job seekers are now prioritizing flexibility and work-life balance, and they're expecting employers to make accommodations. Going forward, there's a real opportunity for businesses to take the lead in rolling out digital-first, accessible workplace plans that are inclusive of all Americans, including those living with disabilities and chronic illnesses. The Americans with Disabilities Act has led to major advancements that benefit both the disability and chronically ill communities to this day. As someone with a chronic illness, I am so thankful that laws exist to protect people like me from discrimination in employment, housing, and many other aspects of life. While today we're here to celebrate ADA Day, I do want to call attention to the fact that the national unemployment rate for people with disabilities is still more than double that of non-disabled Americans. 31 years after the passage of the ADA, we can do better. While inclusivity is driven by the top of any organization, it must be supported throughout. Companies taking a closer look at their own diversity and inclusion needs to consider how they can embrace and benefit from employees with disabilities. Leadership needs to step up, to speak out, and to self-disclose. This creates a culture where people feel more comfortable to disclose and ask for accommodations. Currently, only about 3% of people disclose their illness or disability to their employer. This is a vast gap from the 60% of our population with a chronic illness and 25% with a disability. If you're a woman in the C-suite, I am sure you are proud and comfortable to share that. I am. But we do not see disabled people in the C-suite being open about their disabilities. Beyond providing an inclusive space to disclose, employers must take the initiative to tap into those broader pools of candidates and focus on hiring individuals whose disability or chronic illness would not stop them from being an excellent team member. Come join us at Chronically Capable. We have over 50,000 job seekers ready and able to work. Ultimately, organizations need to ensure that they are open to applicants of all abilities, by being mindful of barriers in the application and interview processes and fostering an inclusive workplace culture. The challenges of participating in a traditional interview process should not compromise how a candidate who may be highly qualified and effective is viewed. Same goes with the challenges of participating in the day-to-day of a workplace. I will reiterate that no one should ever have to decide between their health and their career ambitions. So moving beyond the pandemic, we must continue to support remote and non-traditional workplace plans that include those living with disabilities and chronic illnesses. We must continue to provide accessible technology and policies that don't exclude but include those with disabilities in our workplaces. Moving beyond the pandemic, we must continue to support remote and non-traditional workplace plans that include those living with disabilities and chronic illnesses. And we must continue to provide accessible technology and policies. I mentioned the fear that my community is facing today. We are fearful that we just got a taste of greatness and now we will be stripped of it. We fear that things will go back to how they were pre-pandemic. It's time that the chronically ill and disabled community gets their fair shot at work. We now know it's possible. It's up to businesses to be actively inclusive by providing job opportunities and accessible hiring practices for all individuals living with chronic illnesses and disabilities. The time is now. Thank you.
All right. Wow. Oh, that was great. I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you all enjoyed Hannah's speech. I was taking some notes as she was speaking, and no, it is amazing. It is amazing. I think when we talk about some of the key things that we just talked and what she was talking about, I think one is self-identification. This is something that I think everybody can, really kind of relate to, because it was something that I faced as my own journey, was a challenge of self-identifying. But it is something that I think every organization can really do a good job and work towards, of building out a self-identification campaign. And then I think it's also really important to be intentional about our hiring processes. Where are we looking for people and talent? I thought it was amazing. I had no idea that there was 50,000 people on Chronically Capable. That's a great source of talent. As we're looking for top talent, looking outside of our traditional, talent pools, and looking and tapping into this untapped pool of talent that's right at Chronically Capable. But anyways, I'm so thankful that that Hannah took the time to share those words, and that we were able to provide it to y'all. One of the things that recently came about, President Biden, during his speech during the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act Day on Monday, he actually mentioned that people with the long-term COVID will also be fall underneath the ADA. So these are some of the things that we have to be aware of, because I think it's over 500,000 people in the U.S. have had COVID and or died of COVID, and there's people, millions with COVID, living with it. So I think it's something we need to all be aware of, because as we go back into the workforce, it's going to be something we need to be intentional about. Before we move on, I do want to say thank you to several partners, because none of this would be possible without them. The City of Raleigh's Mayor for Persons with Committee of Persons with Disabilities, I'm so thankful for them. They're the ones who provided the captioning interpreter today, so thank you for them. And then also the Capital Area Workforce Development Board. Wonderful folks over there have been partnering with us the last couple of years on different disability and inclusion events, so thank you. Then the Raleigh Metro SHRM, thank you for your support. And then the Raleigh Chamber. Danya and his team are just wonderful, and just so thankful. So also anybody who's looking for another great event, check out the DEI conference in August. So please take a look at the Raleigh Chamber site and find out when that is. But now I'd like to switch gears and talk about the James Benton Scholarship. This is an award that the Raleigh Mayor's Committee for Persons with Disability provides to two individuals each year who are living with a disclosed disability and are looking to further their education. And this year, the two people are Sam Condola, who will be attending High Point University, and Noah Barton, who will be attending NC State University. So super excited to both of them. They will be receiving the $1,000 scholarship in honor of James Benton, who is a who was an advocate and leader for disability inclusion here in the Triangle. So please join me in congratulating them and wishing them the best in their new endeavor. Now, kind of, I think it's a fitting transition, kind of going from these two individuals who wanted to further their career to introducing the moderator for today's panel, who is Dan Gonzalez, who is the co-founder of District C. District C is an amazing organization that's changing the way that we're preparing students for the jobs of tomorrow. I had the opportunity to work with Dan on multiple occasions, and we got some really cool stuff in the pipeline that I can't wait to share. But Dan actually, his career started off as a student at Dartmouth College, where he did engineering, and then before he became a physics teacher. Afterwards, Dan became the president of Manhattan Prep, the largest GMAT course in the world, and I'm sure I use them. I think I use Kaplan, but I think Manhattan Prep and Kaplan are both the same organization. But I totally get it. Dan is one of the leaders that I'm just so proud of getting to know over the last year. And there's so much more I could talk about, but I'll pass it on to Dan to introduce the panel. And thank you, Dan, for doing this.
Thank you, John. It's really my pleasure and my honor. So much so that I'm wearing my Abler T-shirt here today. Not only as a proud partner of Abler, but as a client of Abler. District C, the organization that I co-founded and currently help to run, uses Abler services, and we couldn't be more grateful to the Abler team for their support as we strive to become a more accessible organization. So thank you for allowing me to be here today and for inviting me. I would love to invite on camera Tim, Lindsay, and Shannon, the three phenomenal panelists that we have today. I can't think of a better kind of diverse group. I think we're going to have such unique perspectives from these three panelists, and again, grateful to be moderating this. Well, let's kind of go around the horn and have you all introduce yourselves. Lindsay, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'd love to. John, Dan, thank you for including me today. I'm super pumped about this event. That was a phenomenal speech by Hannah to kick it off. Everyone, my name is Lindsay Regg. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO of 321 Coffee. We are a coffee shop and roaster located here in Raleigh that focuses on employing individuals with disabilities. So everything from working as a cashier to the barista to the roaster. We've got an awesome staff. It's amazing to see what is capable when these people do have the opportunity for professional development, community, and just showcasing what these people can bring to a team and to the workforce. So thanks for having me today. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Awesome. Thanks, Lindsay. Shannon, how about you? You're muted, Shannon. I think, Shannon, you're still...
There we go.
Oh, there you go. Awesome. We got you.
I was having issues over here. But yeah, hi, I'm Shannon Garner. I'm actually an accessibility analyst here at Abler, and I do a lot of the screen reader testing of websites and other digital content, mobile apps, software, and things of that nature. And thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you, Shannon, and thank you for all the help that you've given to District C as we have, as I've said, as we've endeavored to make our resources more accessible. You've been a huge resource. Tim, how about you?
Hey, well, my primary role, I work at RTI as a research economist. I'm also legally blind, and when I started at RTI, I don't know, probably 8 years ago now, I thought I was the only disabled person at RTI, and was able to get in touch with our human resource people and look into starting something called an employee resource group, and was one of the co-founders, or am one of the co-founders of the the Accessibility ERG, which is a wonderful community. It's really opened my eyes and helped me learn a lot about myself, what it means to be disabled, what it means to be blind, and what it means to have accessibility challenges. It's been a really interesting journey with this community.
Great, thank you all. Let's actually, Tim, I'd love to dive in a little bit there to start. So RTI is a big organization. As you think about accessibility, there are lots of different kinds of accessibility issues and challenges that I imagine you all are trying to face. Can you talk about some of the initiatives that you and the ERG have implemented, some of the success stories that have helped make RTI more accessible to its employees?
We've done actually a whole number of things, and I want to highlight a couple of our important ones. We did something that I just learned about in the last year or so, a human library event, which was a very educational experience, I think, for the RTI community. We had a great number of people attend, and it's where people in our Accessibility ERG were open and vulnerable with the larger community to help the RTI as a whole be more understanding and help our colleagues just know or learn a little bit about what it means to have accessibility challenges. And I think that's been a really good way to connect the community. But we've also built some bridges behind the scenes with our facilities people, our HR people. So we've been able to work with HR to streamline the accommodation process. And we've actually basically unleashed a lot of enthusiasm from the different administrative parts of RTI who wanted to help but weren't sure exactly how to do it, and having a connection with our ERG. I mean, just down to things when we moved to Zoom over the last couple of years, our ERG has worked with our IT people to enable captioning and distribute instructions on how to enable captioning for all of our hard of hearing colleagues.
So just to stick with this for a second, I imagine there are a bunch of people listening to this who work at organizations who want to kind of make strides. How do you, as an accessibility advocate at RTI, when you think about the scope and all of the different directions you could run in to make a difference, how do you balance, I guess I would say, accessibility inclusion with a need to kind of take positive steps forward? I meant you got to like bite the elephant eat the elephant one bite at a time. How do you balance like the wide, vast variety of needs with like, okay, we need to kind of take steps forward? Where do you start?
Honestly, we started by creating a safe space for people to come together as an accessibility community, so that people just knew that they weren't alone and knew that they had people to support each other, right? And that would create a great, well, not only a great community, but a great foundation to confidence for our community to then sort of identify what were things that we could contribute to, right? And people that we could reach out to. We identified that, that folks were having, issues with, identifying how to get through the accommodations process. So then we reached out to, our human resources people, and, they assigned a lead HR person, and that person now sits on our ERG. So there's a lot of communication flow there. And so we built it out, one stage at a time, identifying things that we thought were sort of priority items. We built a new building at RTI, and so the ERG reached out to the facilities managers and the building contractors and had a meeting with the architect. So just, identifying priorities after we built a safe community for all of us to work together.
Thanks, Tim. Shannon, I'd love to bounce it over to you. Just on this topic of like creating a safe space or psychological safety around disability and disability inclusion. What is it like to work at a company whose mission it is to help other organizations work on this stuff? But I imagine you all are working on this yourselves as well within Abler. Can you talk a little bit about how Abler thinks about disability inclusion at Abler itself?
Wow, it's an awesome experience to work here at Abler because, we are bringing awareness to companies, and some companies, they really don't know. It's not that they don't care, but they don't know. And it's good to be able to educate them and make them more aware of what the things that we do need as people with disabilities to make our work spaces safer or more accommodating for us and the things that we do need, especially when it comes to the digital side of things. You know, how much of a difference just labeling a button on your website could be to for someone to actually apply and, you know, or do their job, you know what I mean? So it's it's always a great experience just to bring their awareness and have that light bulb go off in their heads and just they're thinking like, hey, we didn't know this, but now we are aware, and we're going to make sure that we're going to continue to be the best that we can be as far as accessibility and diversity and inclusion goes in the future. And thank you for bringing this to our attention. So
Yeah, I can definitely say firsthand experience that that is the case for me. What are you, as you're working with, like you're working with other companies every single day on these issues, what are the biggest obstacles in your mind as you're talking with people, kind of getting their point of view on this work? What are the biggest obstacles to like faster progress, if that makes sense?
I think the biggest obstacle for me was to change. Sometimes you have to change people's mindset of their way of thinking, because we're all getting to a space to where we're so used to something, and when you bring something different into the situation, it's hard to swallow. But once you show the benefits of the new change and what it's going to bring and into your life, then you just say, okay, you know, I see the positive things that can come from this. So maybe I need to change and I need to figure out something different. So I feel like that's the biggest obstacle, but it's coming along.
Yeah, well, thanks for the work you do on it. Lindsay, I have had the pleasure of knowing you for the last 2 or 3 years, and just have been so inspired by 321 and the work that you all do. Your business model, at least from the start, has been very like on-site based, right? It's a very on-site based business, and would love to have you talk about your business model, but also some of the things that you've been doing the last year or so, and maybe share how your emerging business model or evolving business model is perhaps creating new opportunities for your employees, especially post-COVID. I think I'm imagining the audience will love to hear about how things work at 321 and kind of where you're headed.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're definitely spot on that, especially before COVID, our business was very dependent on you come into the shop, you order your latte, and you leave with your latte, right? Very on-site, in-person experience. And a big part of that was purposeful. What we're doing is trying to get the general community in and interacting with people with disabilities that they may not otherwise interact with, right? When you see our shop, a lot of people see the word coffee and in they come, and all of a sudden they're standing in front of someone with autism who's taking their order at the cash register, and they're chatting with someone with Down syndrome while they're waiting for their drink. And it's just that very immersive, inclusive experience. And so for us, and I mean, many other businesses, especially in the food and beverage industry, really took a hit, at least at first, with this whole like stay at home, don't go to restaurants, don't go to coffee shops mandate that was put in place at the beginning or last spring. So we fortunately took that as an opportunity to pivot. That was sort of the buzzword for a lot of people last year, and find out what other ways can we grow and find new ways to manifest this mission of just general inclusion. And so for us, that was pivoting to start roasting our own coffee. So we said, well, if people can't come to us for coffee, we can send coffee to them. And so we were still living our mission by creating those meaningful jobs for individuals with disabilities. Now it was just roasting coffee instead of steaming the milk on a latte. And so it was a new tackle for all of us to learn. None of us had we didn't know what a roaster was. We didn't know how to work one. We didn't know how you get raw coffee beans. And so it was that big learning experience that we all went through together. And I think it's been such a grateful one. I'm grateful for that experience because it opened up a whole new door for 321 in partnering with other businesses and really getting into that theme of like conscious purchase decisions and supplier diversity, because we're seeing individuals and companies selectively choosing 321 coffee to use in their office, to use in their restaurants, to buy from California, because they know that by buying from 321, they're really creating those job opportunities, which means a lot.
Yeah, so if you work at an office and you have coffee at your office, you should look up Lindsay after this panel and see if you can get some 321 coffee into your office. This is a great opportunity. As Lindsay said, it supports such a great mission. I'll throw this out for all three of you. I was actually shocked to hear during Hannah's keynote this 3% disclosure number. 3% of people with disabilities disclosing that they have disability in their workplace. I just would love to hear your perspective on that. What is your best guess as to like what's driving that number? And if you can, like, how do we change that dynamic? I'll just open it up. Anyone want to jump on?
This is Shannon. I think
Yep.
it's a fear thing. No one wants to feel like they're different from anyone else. You know, most of the time we want to fit into this box. And I think we need to make sure that we let people know that it is okay to tell us, because maybe we're in the same predicament or in the same situation. We need someone who we can relate to. So maybe it's, like I said, the more awareness that's out there, I think that number will go up more from a 3%. It's okay to be different, because I am.
Thanks, Shannon.
This is
I'll
Lindsay.
second. Go ahead, Lindsay.
Sorry, Tim, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I second what Shannon was saying, that it's, you know, okay to be different, but it's hard sometimes to be vulnerable. And we've at RTI and our ERG community, our accessibility community has worked hard to be vulnerable and to model that so that people can say, hey, I've got some kind of challenge in my life. And we all, you know, the statistics are that we all at some point, will have some kind of accessibility challenge, right? And whether we want to call it a disability or not, we're all going to be different. Right. And so, you know, we've seen that. So our human library event was a really good model for that. We recently had a senior vice president shared their story to celebrate ADA Day about how they had a disability and were uncomfortable, you know, about sharing that, and had to think about the vulnerability there. So, sharing that, being vulnerable, I think helps other people do the same. And sorry to interrupt, Lindsay, you were going to say?
Yeah, Tim, I was going to echo similarly to Shannon's point about the connotation of being different and not wanting to be different in a negative capacity. I thought it was really interesting how Hannah said that she's proud to say that she's a female CEO and co-founder, but in that contrast to her disability. And I think that I've, in a very different way, had similar experiences of being a female CEO, but also being very young. And sometimes age in my experience has been used in a negative connotation against me. And I could sympathize and empathize with individuals with disabilities who may have similar experience, which is what leads to that 3%. And so I think a big thing is just there seems to be a stigma that having a disability is a bad thing. And that's, I think, what leads to people not wanting to share that, but instead finding ways of, you know, having someone with a disability. That means that they are very creative problem solvers and they've overcome a lot of obstacles and some other positive parts that make these people of value that they're bringing to a company. And so I think as soon as we as a society can start recognizing the positive light that different can bring, people will be more proud to share of their differences.
Yeah, I think so well said. I think there's so much great research on the power of diversity. And I think when we think about diversity, need to think about it in every way possible, right? And diverse teams will create bigger, better innovations than homogenous teams. I think that's proven. Thanks for that. So Lindsay, you've spoken a little bit about how you're thinking differently about your work kind of since the pandemic. Tim and Shannon, I'd love to hear at your workplaces at RTI and at Abler, through the pandemic, remote work, I imagine you're beginning to come back to the office a little bit. How are you thinking about disability inclusion post-COVID, or kind of in the current stage of COVID? How's it changing opportunities? Like, what do we need to get right to make sure, to Hannah's point, that we get it right this time? Shannon, let's start with you.
It's kind of difficult for me because I work in a digital area with digital accessibility. So the transition from working in the office to working at home wasn't about my work, but it was more about me and not being able to have that interaction with people, going from working in this corner with 6, 7 other people, maybe not that many, maybe 4 or 5, to being by yourself all the time. It was kind of difficult. So now transitioning back to the office, the positive thing about going through the pandemic in my work is that we overcome a lot of obstacles, in the digital area, as far as like being able to communicate through Zoom and Teams and find all these cool tools that works with all my assistive technology. And if it didn't work, how do we get it to work? And I feel going back to the office with the tools at hand that I have is just going to be a lot better. And in the meantime, we have had new team members that I finally get to meet in person. So it's a good thing.
You're hitting on something I think is super insightful that maybe I haven't realized until you just said this, but as I'm reflecting back while listening to you, there's so much more comfort with digital tools and technology to support work than there was a year and a half, 2 years ago. And so I think that's such a great point, because I think that presents an opportunity. So yeah, thank you for pointing that out. Tim, how about you?
So I've been lucky enough, and this is just because of my role in the ERG, is that I've included in a committee at RTI thinking about how the workplace of the future committee, like where is RTI going to go as we transition back? And I have, a single refrain that I mentioned at every meeting, which is one size does not fit all. And that's my one thing, that we need to remember that, whatever solution we try to do needs to be tailored to customizable, because everybody's different and everybody has their needs, right? Whether, I'm legally blind, so I need an accessibility setup with a large monitor and software. But we also have, colleagues with ADHD that, need a quieter space with less distractions. There's such a wide range of needs out there. So whatever solutions we're putting forward need to be flexible, need to have that one size does not fit all mentality. And so that's kind of where I sit on this. It's got so many opportunities, right, that Zoom has enabled. Like, I love not having to commute because I don't drive, right, and I'm in the Triangle area, and it's not an easy way to get around. So I love being able to work from home, and that's really an accessibility advantage for me. But there are accessibility challenges for the hard of hearing with Zoom, and captioning is not in any way perfect. So working with all of our technology partners to make that solution work is key.
What are you finding as you're working with your technology partners? Is that how has that been going? Are they engaging with kind of full commitment? Has it been a struggle? What's your sense on that front?
So one of our key things is that the IT community at RTI has actually designated somebody who is a liaison with us, who is now communicating back and forth and helping to push initiative forward. And this colleague was instrumental with rolling out captioning on Zoom, which is integral. But there's a number of things that they're working with us going forward to try to figure out these solutions. So yes, we're finding definite, connections with IT and the IT people, but it's they don't know what solutions are out there. They don't know what solutions are needed, and the communication with the accessibility community is providing them the feedback and direction they need to solve the problems, I think.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. By the way, audience members, if you have questions, please feel free to chat them in. I know that Sarah is monitoring the chat. We'd be happy to toss those questions over to the panelists here. So feel free to chat those in. In the meantime, and we can start with you, Lindsay, on this one. And would love to hear from all of you. What do you, based on your experience, and you're all coming at this from a different angle and different experiences, and working at 3 different companies, what do you want, as we think about this topic of accessibility in the workplace, trying to change this dynamic of like 36% employed, what is the most important thing that you would want kind of the average person out in the world to know, or to think about, or to strive for, to learn about? Lindsay, we'll start with you.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think something interesting that I'm experiencing as we are still living through COVID and, you know, things are changing every day, is now there's a lot of talk about the labor shortage. And, you know, companies are short-staffed, they don't have people able to come into work, whatever it may be. And that reality versus, you know, me at 321 Coffee, I'm sitting here with a wait list of over 40 people wanting to work at 321. We hear about Hannah from Chronically Capable saying that she's got 50,000 people looking, that she is ready to help find jobs. And there's people out there that want to work, but for some reason there's a disconnect between employers and this untapped talent. And I know John hit on this a little bit in the beginning too. And so I think a big thing here is just raising awareness that, you know, maybe what we've done in the past of where ways that we've recruited, ways that we've done our hiring has gotten us to where we are, but it's not necessarily sustainable for keeping going and really hitting a lot of the growth and development that we as a company and we as a society want to go hit. And I get really excited whenever I talk with John, honestly, and hear about what Abler's doing, because I think that the Abler team is filling such a critical role in this, and just raising awareness and bringing inclusion and accessibility to the conversation. Because a huge question that we always get, and I get, is how do you hire someone with a disability? Like, you know, I'd love to be more inclusive. How do I do that? And I mean, truthfully, from a logistical standpoint, hiring someone, when I hired one of my baristas with Down syndrome, it was absolutely no different than when I hired one of my managers who was neurotypical. Where the disconnect comes is people are coming to 321 Coffee and asking for a job because they see us as putting inclusion on the forefront, and it's one of our strong principles. And so I think for other companies to be able to do the same and make that known and have the inclusive and accessible website and that hits on all of the different forms of diversity and needs, I think is so important.
Yeah, Shannon, same question to you. What's one thing that you would hope someone out in the world would be thinking about or be learning about on this topic?
I think Lindsay hit it right on the head. You know, be more open, be more diverse, and, you know, just going through the pandemic with all the remote working has opened a lot of doors for so many individuals, especially for people who I know who's not able to commute, like Tim said earlier. I'm having a brain freeze. But, you know, it's so many people, especially who have visual impairments, who are not able to commute to work, because they not only are they visually impaired, but they also live in remote areas, you know? So they're not able to get to a large city or to a place who have transportation, and they have to rely on maybe on family members. And you can't always rely on family members to take you places, and especially to work, especially when you want to be reliable to your employer. So having the option to work remotely for those individuals is an extremely positive thing, because now they can be more independent.
Yeah, this has come up a couple of times now. It's a takeaway for me, this transportation issue piece. I appreciate you raising it. Tim, same question to you. What's kind of the one big thing you would hope people know, are thinking about, learning about, and then we'll pivot over to some audience questions.
Well, I was just going to repeat what Lindsay said. You know, being open about your inclusiveness is what allows, you know, somebody who has some accessibility challenges to know that they can have the confidence of applying to your company for work, right? So being clear on your website, being clear, reaching out to the community and letting folks know that you are inclusive will give, you know, people the strength to be vulnerable and apply. And then I think that the companies can tap into those pools.
That makes a ton of sense. That like order of operations, companies need to be able to project, you know, an inclusive attitude before people are going to feel comfortable. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Sarah, I'll invite you back on. Do you have any audience questions for the panel?
Yeah, I sure do. I think it'd be really great if we could touch on a little bit about, you know, question of how can we kind of start facilitating a discussion around workplace accessibility with like our colleagues, with our supervisors and our bosses. Do you guys have any advice on how to move forward with that?
Shannon, Tim, Lindsay?
It takes
Anyone?
one person, just one person to stand up and say, hey, let's think about this. Let's think about accessibility. Let's think about diversity and inclusion and how it can benefit us. It takes that one person to go and say something. So, you know, just an email to whoever you need to send it to and say, hey, this, I think we should do this, and how it can reflect and be positive on the company.
Right. Yeah. I'm going to echo, you know, Shannon. I mean, just reaching out. I mean, luckily the nudge that got me involved was the RTI's opening up to this sort of employee resource group approach to diversity and inclusion. But when they posted that notice, they didn't know who was going to apply. And I was like, I have been thinking about it for the 2 years that I'd already been at RTI, thinking about, am I alone as a disabled person? I mean, who is my community? And who can I reach out to talk about, you know, related issues? And I reached out to HR, you know, immediately, and they were so welcoming of that idea and have been very supportive over our journey for the last, I think it's been 6 years now that we've been, you know, building this ERG in this community, and it's made significant contributions. But it involved like reaching out to HR and say, I want to find this, and them and the HR folks giving me the support, and it was already there. They just didn't know how to do it themselves, right? And so we've built this community. So what Shannon said, right? Just reach out and you will find that is there.
Completely. I mean, I think there's a reason that a lot of these companies have these beautiful lounges and high, you know, the catered lunches and, you know, the perks, and it's because employees say like, this is what I want. And so when employees can say like, hey, diversity and inclusion is important, accessibility is important, a strong leadership will respond. And I think that even, you know, just bringing it to the conversation and saying, hey, this is something that I care about, when it's a good thing, people will follow. And I think that that's what I've seen with 321 Coffee, even people who are neurotypical, but they may know somebody or have a friend or a family member who is neurodiverse. And so therefore they're going to stand alongside you. And I think that that power of the team is really what's going to create change.
You know, one thing that's really resonating, Shannon, your quote, it takes one person. I've got this written down and circled twice in my paper. I think, you know, as someone who's leading an organization that is thinking about this now on a daily basis, one of the things that, you know, I'm wrestling with personally is like, oh my gosh, there's so much that we need to do. It can feel intimidating to think about how do we make progress in a way that's meaningful. And I think you're reminding me, just takes one person, takes one conversation, take one step forward, you know? And I think that's really a powerful way to think about this work, is like, make the progress you can make one person at a time, one issue at a time. And you'll be making forward progress in doing so. So I really appreciate that mindset. Sarah, any other questions burning a hole in your pocket?
We've got one for Lindsay. Have you thought about partnering with Esteemed Coffee? Maybe sending the 40 employees that are waiting for employment there.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's exactly what we did actually. Back when they were hiring, we were able to collaborate with them and share to those 40 people, hey, this is Esteemed Coffee. They're over in Cary. Great mission as well. And, you know, hopefully we were able to place some of them into jobs at Esteemed.
Awesome. Great. And we've got a question for Tim. So Tim, you should reach out to your supplier diversity team and procurement team and have your ERG discuss the accessibility needs to be more inclusive during the procurement process.
It's a great idea, and we'll follow up on that. You know, I know that they're open. Our procurement people are definitely open to that conversation. So thank you for that suggestion.
And probably have time for one more question, and this is a good place to kind of segue into this. But so I know an accessible workplace kind of extends beyond the physical space. Can you guys talk a little bit about that or shed some insight as to what really is the impact and what does it look like to have a truly accessible workplace beyond the physical space?
So we've done a little bit of thinking about that at RTI in our accessibility group, and our mission involves, right, making a space where our colleagues can be, and this is anybody with accessibility challenges, can be fully present, right, as a colleague, right, fully present in their work, fully present in the social aspects, and that is not in the physical, that is in the social, that's in the mental, right? So everybody needs to feel not only welcome, but you know, fully participatory, and that I think is where we want to move to in terms of accessibility. Or at least those are that's my 2 cents on that.
All right, well, let's wrap it there. I know there's one more segment here for this webinar. Tim, Lindsay, Shannon, thank you all for your leadership, for your work. Abler, I feel this personally. There is a new energy in the Triangle community since the founding of Abler, and just want to thank you all for bringing that energy and the spirit that you bring. I think you're making our community better. So thank you for that. John, I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate that. It's very kind of you to say that. And before we go, Dan, I would like you just to kind of, I know we'll be, the pilot is going on next week. I'd just love to just kind of have you just share a little bit quickly about the District C Abler Works teamship program, if you can, just in a couple of words.
Yeah, so we are, District C and Abler are working on a program called Abler Works Teamship, which is a model through which teams of high school students will solve real problems for real businesses in the community. And those teams of high school students will be diverse in every way that you can imagine. We're starting off on August 2nd with a 2-week pilot. We'll have 2 teams of students from schools all across the region. On those, on each of those 2 teams, there will be two students who are sighted and 2 students with low vision. And so this is kind of a diversity that we have never worked with before, that we're really excited to partner with Abler on. And I think what we're going to find, to Lindsay's point from earlier, when we put these students together, they're going to create innovations and thinking in a really powerful way for the companies that they're going to be solving problems for. In this case, Groga, a Triangle-based startup, is the company that we're working with. So really excited to be working with John, Morgan, Sarah, and the team, Shannon, to launch this program on August 2nd.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. And before we go, Dan, where can people get in touch with you?
Yes, districtc.co.
Awesome.
Districtc.co.
Awesome. Lindsay, is she still on?
I'm here.
How can people get in touch with you?
Thanks, John. Yes, people can get in touch with me. Email is the best way, lindsay@321coffee.com. And actually, Lindsay is Lindsay. There's a lot of different spellings there.
Cool. And Shannon, how can people get in touch with you? Oh, we'll come back to Shannon. She may be on mute. Tim, if you're there, how can people get in touch with you?
Yeah, email is excellent. Tim O'Brien at rti.org. Really simple. TIMOBRIEN at rti.org.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hi, I'm back.
All right, Shannon, how can people get in touch with you?
You can reach me at shannon.garner@abler360.com.
Awesome. Thank you. Again, thank you all for your time today, your leadership, and your words of wisdom, because I actually learned a lot, and I took a note. It really does take one person asking. All those companies with fancy lounges and catered lunches, it's those same voices who need to be asking for greater diversity and inclusion and accessibility, and that's how we're going to see change. So that was one of the coolest things I heard. So thank you all for your time. And we also want to give a special thank you to the interpreters, the folks providing the captioning, the Mayor's Committee for Persons with Disabilities. Thank you for all your support. Capital Area Workforce Development Board, and Raleigh Metro SHRM and the Raleigh Chamber. Thank you all for all of your support. Sarah, thank you for your moderation and everything today. And I'm just so thankful for the community, for you all taking the time to spend with us and celebrate this momentous day. It's something that means a lot to me now. It didn't before, but I'm so thankful. So thank you all. And Sarah, I'll pass it on to you.
Yeah, thank you, John, and thank you so much to our wonderful panelists and our wonderful moderator, Dan. And again, shout out to our interpreter and our captioner. You all helped so much today. We really appreciate it. And thank you all for coming today. Just a final wrap up, please look out for an email. Early next week, I will include the link to the recording of the webinar and any additional resources, as well as contact information for our wonderful panelists and moderator. So thank you all so much for coming. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.